to the last section of week 1. Last time we talked about cleansing the home, cleansing our magical space. Today we're going to complete the circle, if you will. We're going to talk about how to set up protection around the house and inside the house. First, we're going to talk about timing, then we're going to move to the outside of the house, and then we'll move into the house and again layer different things on. We'll go from the basic to the more advanced. I talked a little bit about timing last time. I just want to reiterate for this section that protection magic is a little bit glass half full, glass half empty in terms of how people see it in traditions. Cleansing magic is usually associated with the waning moon, less conflict there. Protection magic, some people see it as, again, it's either bringing protection to you, so this is where you'll often see protection magic to be timed for during the full moon. But then you'll also, conversely, you also see some people who maybe think it more acts to repel things constantly, and so you may also see like a waning crescent moon in terms of the timing. Honestly, this one, again, it depends on the tradition you work with, and maybe just depends on how you feel about protection. Is it something that is constantly repelling, or is it bringing protection to you? Again, glass half full, glass half empty there, so definitely you do you there. And before we jump into the rest of the section, I just want to make sure you get very comfortable, so get a coffee or tea or some other beverage and stay hydrated, because again, this is going to be quite packed of information. It's going to be very hands-on, and hopefully will teach you lots of different ways that you can protect the house. So first, let's talk about the outside of the home. On the outside of the home, if you happen to live on a house or in a townhouse or in a property that has an outside, then again, you can do some of these steps. But we are going to talk about what if you don't, what if you simply live in an apartment. So don't worry, I've got you covered there as well. And same for the broom closet. If you're in the broom closet, we will talk a little bit about how you can adapt some things, and then how you can, again, just make it a little bit less obvious and conspicuous. So on the outside of the house, again, thinking about a home here of some sort that has an outside, there are a couple of things that you can use and are very simple to get a hold of, to maybe a little bit varying degrees, but some of them, they're highly protective and have associations that are highly protective associations throughout history. So a couple of things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about salt, and we're going to talk about using salt across your thresholds. These are any doors, any doors that are into the house. So it's a garage door, if it's a front door, back door, all the doors that are in your house, you want to have some salt. We're also going to talk about some other things such as garlic, and we're going to talk about as well using iron in your property as well, and just the pros and cons of that. So after that, we will go into oil and using a protective threshold oil as well, and this is going to go on the windows and it's going to go on our doors. So this is really, really great, and I will teach you how to make the magical oil. And this is a process you can apply to any magical oil. I'm also going to teach you the full way to charge something. Last time we started talking a little bit about charging, but this time we're really going to go through the whole process, and you can use this to charge any magical tool and just how to prepare it for that. So first, let's talk about salt. Salt literally used to cost its weight in gold. It was super, super expensive in ancient times in different cultures. So again, this is throughout time, I think it received that protective association partially because it cleans. It's a cleansing agent, and it was used in ancient times to clean as well, to scrub things. It also has healing properties, certain healing properties. Obviously it can disinfect a little bit, but in ancient times, when that's all you have, that's what you're going to go with. It was also expensive, oftentimes prohibitively so. And so again, I think that's part of the reason why salt is such a protective element that we use. There are many different types of salt that you can use. They come from different places, they have different qualities. For our purpose today, we're going to be talking about black salt. And black salt, there are actually two main varieties of black salt. So here I have them here. Now, this one on the right, you can tell it's pretty uniform, and this is because this is actual lava salt. Lava salt is made with, it's actually made with charcoal from coconuts. This one particular one comes from Hawaii, rather. I think there are other types of black salt as well from different parts in Asia and India, but this is a Hawaiian black salt. It's a lava salt, and so it's a little bit different. It's uniform in color, and this one has a little bit of, if you will, a little bit of a fiery nature to it, just because it has that charcoal as well. But I use this one. This one is edible, so you can use this in cooking. I also use this one for black salt when I don't want to make my own, which is black salt. This one's not very black. It's kind of got a little bit of gray. I'll see if you can maybe show it a little bit closer. So it's got a little bit of gray, and the reason for that is you use plain salt. So this will be, I use sea salt, and you mix it with activated charcoal. You mix it with black pepper. You mix it with ash, and this can be ash from different types of woods. So you can actually incorporate protective woods into and make ash out of them, so you can burn them, and then you can add them to your witch's salt. You can also add the other things you could add to it. You can add cauldron filings, so you can add a little bit of iron in there. And finally, you can add protective herbs. So this one actually has a little bit of rosemary. You probably can't tell, but it has a little bit of rosemary and a couple of other of my protective herb blend in there. So this one's really great. Witch's salt has been used again for quite a long time, and it really just helps to create a barrier, and it's going to create a barrier over your thresholds. So let's talk about why are thresholds important. Thresholds are gateways. They're obviously a gateway from the outside in, but they're also liminal spaces. They're also gateways, a little bit of a gateway to the other world, if you will. And so protecting yourself with salt, for example, black salt, it can protect against thieves, so physical protection, and also it will repel sort of anyone who's trying to rob you or anyone who's trying to do you harm physically, but it also gives you that energetic protection against any baneful spirits as well. And again, any type of spirits that may wish you harm or may simply be lost, if you will. But again, any spirit can become an obsessor. So just to protect yourself from any sort of energy like that. Okay, so that's salt, and all you're going to do is you are going to charge it. Again, we'll go through how to charge things when we're making our oil, but you're going to charge it. You are going to charge each ingredient. You're going to put it together, give it one final intent and one final charge, and then you are going to simply sprinkle it on the outside, right on the ground, outside of your thresholds. If you live in an apartment and if you don't have an outside, you can still do it. You can still sneak a little bit of a line of salt on the outside. You could do it on the inside, so no one will see. If you are in the broom closet and you really don't want salt, then this may be a step you have to skip. You can do it across your door, across your threshold. And obviously some of you may have lighter carpet or lighter wood, so if you don't want the black salt to stand out, you can use, you could use just plain salt. Some salt is better than no salt. And they are different in properties, just so you're aware, but again, you could definitely go with that. So that's something you can do. I actually have black carpet. I live in an apartment and I have black carpet on the outside, so it's pretty easy for me to sprinkle black salt and get away with it, and that's it. And a couple of other things about salt: if you are sprinkling it on the outside, you just want to let nature take care of it. So if it rains, it's obviously going to wash some of it away, and that's totally fine. We're not going to go and pick up the salt. You do want to repeat this every couple of months at the very least. Some people do it monthly. And the reason for that is salt absorbs negativity, but it gets full, right? It's like a sponge. At some point in time, sponge can only take so much. So things that are protective, such as salt or crystals, that's why we want to either change them. So like salt, we want to change it to a fresh little bit of salt, or crystals where we want to cleanse them before we reuse them, because otherwise they're going to cling to that negative energy once they've absorbed it. Let's talk about what else we can do on the outside of the home, and kind of we'll go through the different pros and cons of at least one material. Another really popular thing to use is garlic. This particular one is black garlic. You do not need black garlic. This is actually all I had. This time around I use garlic quite a lot and I'm always out of it. So this is the black garlic type, but garlic is another really highly protective plant. It was used since ancient times. In ancient Egyptian tombs, garlic was actually believed to help the dead, so clay garlic was found in tombs. So it has quite a long history, and it was very, very popular in the ancient world as well. And so garlic is, especially obviously, of course, the room is right from Romania. You have a lot of use of garlic and garlic against vampires and but garlic in general in medieval Europe and in medieval European witchcraft traditions was used to protect against witches on the other side, but also witches used garlic the same way, again, for protecting against evil spirits. So definitely garlic is a protective plant. You could simply bury it. Again, if you have access to the outside, you could simply bury it. You could bury it in a line across your threshold. You obviously don't need 20 pieces of garlic to do this. You could either bury just a clove of garlic. You could bury it perhaps one on the outside, one on each corner, and then one in the middle. So you don't have to use up a whole garlic. You can use cloves, but garlic is pretty inexpensive. It's pretty cheap to buy. So I would just get 3 pieces of garlic and do on the outside corners and one in the middle, again, across all your thresholds. And you want to bury it so that it's deep enough, but not so deep enough that later if you had to remove it and you wanted to put new garlic in, you could do that. Again, I live in an apartment, so I don't do that. But one thing you could do as an apartment dweller is you could simply keep garlic. If you're able to, you can keep garlic inside your house. So this is something you could do. You can hang it up over your door. Again, same thing. If you want to protect that threshold, you can just hang it up over your door on the inside. And this was commonly done in Europe as well. So definitely garlic is highly, highly protective. This is the final thing we're going to talk about on the outside, and this is something that you could do on the outside and the inside. But I want to talk a little bit about the history, and this is iron. So iron is a very interesting material. It is probably I think it is the most plentiful material in the universe, as far as we understand it. As far as we have discovered, it is literally in the core of stars. It is in the core of our planet, and it is inside of us. So our blood has iron, of course. And so this is the hemoglobin. So this is literally stuff that's inside us and all around us, and we're made of it. And our planets and stars are made of it. So this is really a cosmic material. And of course, the ancients didn't quite know this much, but when iron was first discovered, it was a very magical tool, because as you can appreciate, each tool that replaced the next was more and more magical to the ancients. And so again, this was this really, really firm, sturdy tool versus all of the different prior materials that were used. So again, it was always seen as magical. And iron is thought in some traditions, it is actually used for implements. So as an example, in traditional witchcraft, iron is used in, you would have, like, for example, a staff, and the staff has a top and a bottom part made of iron, the stang. And so that, again, is used in witchcraft, in traditional witchcraft. Other traditions, and as an example in Kabbalah, it is said that iron, you shouldn't use iron in your magical workings because it will nullify all magical workings. And so again, this is a glass half full, glass half empty. Some magical traditions believe that iron nullifies all magic, and it prevents any spirit from entering, negative or positive. And so if you're working with spirits, if you're going to be conjuring spirits, something you really should keep in mind. And then same for the fair folk. If you are working with fairies, some traditions hold that iron only protects you from the harmful fairies, but iron also likely protects you from all fairies. So again, if you're trying to summon fairies, then this is, you don't want to offend fairies, you don't want to have this anywhere near, and same for your magical implements. But again, it is that kind of, some traditions think it only repels negative and they actually use it in magic, and some traditions think it's a killer of magic. It really just again varies. So just do be aware of that. Depending on your tradition, you may or may not want to use iron in the way that I'm about to talk, in the way I'm about to teach you. But for house protection, definitely burying, like this is just simple iron filing, a scrap of iron from a blacksmith's workshop. So it's quite rusted, it's nothing fancy. And you could bury these in the four corners of your property. You can also, instead of garlic, bury them across the threshold. But again, just make sure you do your research and you kind of feel out for, what do you think? Do you think it repels all spirits, or do you think it only protects you from harmful ones? But definitely iron has fascinating history, so I would encourage you to research it a little bit further. I will give you some historic information on some of these materials as well. Iron used to be, even cemetery gates are still to this day, a lot of times have iron from older days, because it was thought that, again, it was going to keep the spirits inside. Children's bed frames used to be made of iron to prevent fairies from snatching them. And then yet again in other traditions, including, for example, in Volva in Norse traditions, which is the sorceress, the seer. In Norse traditions, a lot of times iron was actually used as an implement. So again, it's, is it going to protect you or protect you too much? That's up to you to decide. The other thing is nails made of iron. Now there are lots of different spells and rituals that include coffin nails. These are just regular wrought iron nails, but you could also actually put these, you can drive them as a stake in the ground with the same purpose. So if you don't have iron filings, but you can get one of these, same thing, you can just drive them into the ground. In ancient Roman times, they actually used coffin nails, and they would put them into the doorway. They would actually drive them into the doorway, and they would drive them 3 nails into the doorway. So you can probably make it as a pyramid. You could put one on top, and then you can put 2 nails on the bottom, one on each side, and that would act almost like another sort of gateway protector. But again, just be aware if you do that. Obviously, this one's going to be harder to hide. You're going to have nails stuck in your door. They're pretty big. You can't really miss these ones. You could probably paint over them, but again, just definitely don't do this if you're living in an apartment. You don't want to have to pay for any damages that you had done. But something else that you could do if you do own a home and you feel iron is very protective, then you could put it into your doorway as well. Put it on the outside, you can put it on the inside. I would suggest inside, just so that they don't rust, and they don't rust from the elements. So, but again, iron is great to use depending on which tradition you're leaning towards. So that pretty much covers some of the things we can do on the outside. And I'm going to give you some suggestions for words you can say on the PDF. I'm not going to take you through that too much, but I am going to give you a little bit more on the PDF, so definitely check it out. What we're going to cover next is we are going to make our magical oil. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up, and we will learn how to do that. Okay, so we're actually going to make 2 different magical oils. The process is going to be exactly the same. I simply needed to make a certain type of oil, so I might as well show you slightly two different ways of making them, just 2 different materials. Again, the process will be exactly the same otherwise. So what you are going to need to make your magical oil is you're going to need a glass jar with a tight-fitting lid. You're going to need herb materials, plant materials, and you're going to need your oil. One thing to note is we are not making an essential oil. An essential oil is an oil that you're basically extracting the oil that is found in plants, flowers, in tiny little glands or little sacs, either out on the outside or inside the flower. It is a totally different chemical process. It's called either distillation, you use steam distillation, and you need specialized equipment to make essential oil. So you actually need something called a still. And this is either they're pretty expensive, you could get your own, they are going to cost you a couple of $100s. They are true lab equipment, so things can go wrong for sure. And again, it's not something that you really need to invest in if you're just going to be using more magical oils. Unless you really want to make your own essential oils and sell them, then you'll have to research. We're not covering that at all here. There are other types of ways to get essential oils. Just for information, you could also use solvents, which are terrible, nasty chemicals. Usually they're used at the manufacturing level at a large scale processing facility. You can also use, there are other types, but again, for our purpose, we're simply making an infusion. So it is just an oil infused with herbs. A couple of things that I want to note is you want to use a glass jar because plastic will leach. Again, you want to avoid plastic as much as possible. In witchcraft in general, you want to use a tight-fitting lid, not a cork lid. A cork lid is not airtight. It will also, the oil may even push up through the cork, so you do not want to use cork. And it really should be tight-fitting, so something that you can screw on and screw off. For this jar, you don't want to also use a giant jar because you will need a lot of oil for the big jars. And this type of infused oil has a shelf life. It's usually 6 months to a year. I would err on the side of caution, and 6 months is about what I have seen it. It usually starts to go bad after that. So again, you will notice because the color will change, the smell will change, and you will just notice. You'll know usually when the oil has gone rancid. So definitely you want to label it properly. And I actually forgot to take out my labels, but you can use, there are different types of labels you can use. There are some labels that easily come off with water and soap. And so those are really great if you want to reuse a jar very often. For larger jars, you can get away with a sticky label, but those are really hard to clean. So there are definitely different label options, but you want to put what type of oil you're making, when you made it, so and of course the ingredients inside, and maybe give a suggested use by date, because this way next time you don't have to calculate and go, okay, how many months is that? You can actually say use by as well, or suggested use by. So you will need a jar. You will also need oil. This is just some simple, some olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. This is a very thick, some oils are more viscous. They have different, again, they just have different thickness. Some are thinner, some are thicker. The least expensive oils are that you can easily obtain are olive, grapeseed, sunflower. I don't use sunflower because it has a bit of a smell, of course, so just up to you, but you can definitely use it. And those would be a little bit more on the thicker side. Then you also have some thinner oils that are more cosmetic grade oils. So this is what I have today. I have fractionated coconut oil. You can use jojoba oil, sweet almond oil. There are a lot of oils that you can actually use to make magical oils. There are two types of oils. One is an anointing oil that you can anoint yourself, anoint your tools, but again, it's something that you're going to be touching. And then one is a dressing oil that you could use to dress your candles or dress other tools. And that one, sometimes you don't want to be touching those because you could make them with, such as hot foot oil. It's made with a lot of ingredients that you don't want to get your hands on. And some other oils that, again, you do not want to touch, maybe because they have a high chili content and so they would be irritating. So again, there are two different types of oils, one that you basically can touch and one that you maybe can still touch, but again, you're going to dress something else with it. So either anointing or dressing magical oils. So two different types. Today I am going to make, this will be more of an anointing oil, but again, it's not intended to go on my skin, but I'm still using oils and ingredients that I could totally anoint myself with this as well if I wanted to. So that's a little bit about oils. Just be aware that the thinner the oil is, the better will actually sort of work with the ingredients a little bit. The thicker ones tend to be, again, it's a little bit difficult, so you wouldn't want to use olive oil and put it on yourself because it is so thick. So just be aware. But for things that we're going to use it for, which is doorways basically and thresholds, it's totally fine that it's a little bit thicker. You can thin it out with certain things. I don't usually do that. I just have just oil and plant ingredients, but there are certain things you can thin it out with as well. And a final note, you could mix it a little bit into water spray, for example, but again, oil and water don't mix. You would have to be shaking it all the time if you wanted to use some of your magical oil in, say, a room spray, but you would have to really shake it because again, they don't mix. So those are the two first ones. Final note about glass jars, you should definitely have them be super clean. I don't sterilize mine. If you do sterilize yours, if you put them in boiling water, be sure to warm it up gradually or your glass will shatter if you just drop it into your boiling water. I don't do that, but if you've ever made jams, of course, you know that anytime you have sort of watery stuff inside, you want to use sterilization. But because we're just using oil and plant materials, I clean mine out with detergent, just soapy water, and then I dry it. Now that's the really important part, is you want this to be super dry. You do not want any bits of water on these hard to get to little corners here. So you want it to be super, super dry inside before you add anything, any oil or plant material in. Okay, so that's about jar and oil. Next, we are going to need our plant material. Now you want to use about somewhere between a third to half of plant material, no more. And then you're going to be filling all the way up to the top with oil. That's all you're going to do. Our plant material should be dried. You could use fresh. I strongly recommend against it because fresh is going to introduce, it has more chance of rotting basically, because again, there's nothing magical about making your oil work forever. It is just plant material, and all plant material goes bad at some point, but there is a higher chance of it rotting because that plant will have that water content inside, that moisture content. So you want to use dry as much as possible. I only use dry in oils. I don't think I've ever actually made it with fresh. And we're going to talk about another different oil in a little bit, but again, for this one, it is just plant material. And I'm going to use my protective blend, which is very simple. It has 2 of the same herbs we used in our cleansing spray. So you could actually just dry some of those herbs. You could dry some of the rosemary, you could dry some of the rosemary, you could dry some of the basil, you can dry some of the thyme, or you can substitute sage, whatever you want to use, and you can simply reuse those in magical oil. So you can make a cleansing spray and a magical oil all in one go. It's very, very good and easy. And so this one is, I'm using rosemary. I am using, these are sage blossoms, and these are the sage blossoms and the rose petals, which is also a very protective plant actually. All of these 3 are highly protective, and in addition to being highly protective, these 2 actually, I just got them in. They are from Greece, and so I have a really special tie to Greece. I had traveled there and I was on the island of Crete, and it was maybe one of the best experiences, my travel experiences of my life. And so this is a very special thing for me as well. So very excited to use this for me again, because it has that special connection. For me, this is even more protective in my mind. And that's all you need, is you need to be convinced of something, and then it will work. So one other thing is you want to energetically clean your jar. You can do a bell ringing inside. So I did a bell inside and outside. You could use incense, don't forget the lid, but you can burn all around the lid, all around the inside and the outside of the jar. You could do, again, the bell, which is what I did. And finally, I actually let it sit under some sun. Solar energy is highly cleansing, just like lunar energy. And then I also had it on a selenite plate, which is again very cleansing. So definitely make sure you physically and energetically clean your jar. Okay, so that's the last about sort of what you will need. Now a big word of warning. And again, I want to really drive this home, that when you are working with plants of any sort, they're wonderful. Yes, there are plant allies, but not all plants are created equally. You need to research every single plant you choose to use and to make for yourself, for others. And if you are, especially if you're at any point in time when you want to give oils away, let's say to a friend or any other room spray, whatever it is that you make, you have to be sure that you're not using something that can cause an adverse reaction in someone. A couple of things. If you have a medical condition, if you are pregnant, if children will be using this product, they all have very, very different requirements, very different uses. So be sure that you are using things that are safe for your medical condition. If you're pregnant, if a child will be using it, if you have pets around. As I mentioned last time, essential lavender oil is toxic to cats. I don't know about dogs. I only have cats, so I never know about dogs. Sorry. But this is something you want to research and make sure that it is safe for all of your pets. I use it in my cleansing spray because I use a very small amount of the oil. It is diluted with water. I also use it, I don't use it anywhere near where the cats are. Like, I don't spray their cat beds. I don't spray my bed because I love sleeping on my bed. I basically I only spray in the air, I spray up high. The amount of droplets that might go on the ground, again, at very, very minimal, and so, but I, I take that risk. That's my thing. Some people are very risk adverse. They're very, very cautious about that. So again, if you have cats, maybe you don't want to use cinnamon oil, lavender oil, some of the other things that are toxic to our pets that we sometimes don't even know. So research, make sure that you're using things that are safe. And the other thing I want to mention is essential oils. Now, I'm not going to add any essential oil to this magical oil today. We're just infusing it. But some people like to add essential oils, and I added essential oils to my room spray. And I wanted to be very clear that essential oils are dangerous if applied straight to your skin. That is why we use a carrier oil for them. And if you're going to be using them in sprays or perfumes, you still need to dilute them. So just be very careful. There are dilution calculators online, and I will have some in the PDF that you can take a look at. But again, there are lots online, and they're very simple. And what you need to know is you need to know your container size, how many ounces or milliliters it is. And then you need to know usually what dilution percentage you want to aim for. And then it will tell you how many drops you can add. So last time I made this spray, I believe I used about 35, which is, I had a 2-ounce bottle, and 35 drops is a 3% dilution rate. Because it's a spray, I can get away with a higher dilution rate. If you're going to be using the oil on your skin, the rule of thumb is 1% for children, 2% for a healthy adult, and 3% would be max. I would go with 2%. 5% is the max for sprays or perfumes, but I go with an abundance of caution. Plus, I don't want it to be so strongly smelling, so I actually use 3% even in my sprays. But again, those are the different percentages. Just be aware of that again, because I know some of you might want to put some essential oils in this. So just be sure you know how much you're going to need to dilute and how many drops you can use. Very important. Please be safe. Please do your research. Never ingest any of this. Seriously, none of this is for ingesting. You could infuse olive oil with any of these and you could ingest it. So this one is okay, but just again, never ingest essential oils. And just, you wouldn't want to ingest everything, but some things you can ingest. You can actually infuse your own cooking, kitchen witchcraft. You can definitely do that, but just again, be sure you know what you're using and what you're doing. So sorry for the long warning, but I feel like it's just so important, because if you're new and you're starting out, I just want you to be really safe and research. Know your herbs, know your plants. So all we're going to do is, again, this has already been cleansed. This is all physically and energetically cleansed. So next, what we're going to do is, I've already kind of actually charged this jar. I'm going to show you again how to charge all of your different plant materials. We're going to charge each one. We're going to wake it up. We're going to put it into our jar. We're going to pour the oil over it. I don't charge the oil so much. And then we are going to do one final charge of what we want, the intent for our oil. And then we are going to carefully seal it. And then I'll explain what to do next. So the last time I think I mentioned how to awaken materials. And so again, you kind of want to think about the properties each one has depending on the spell you do. All of these are protective, so I'm just going to say the same thing. But again, you can tailor it to whatever you want to do. So the first is we want to awaken the material. You want to run your hands through it, kind of connect with it a little bit. You always want to thank the plant energy when, for doing the intent that it is supposed to do. So again, just kind of connect with it. I did not make this. I actually just realized I totally forgot to do this step, and I would have made the rose smaller. The smaller the bits that go into your magic oil, the better. That's okay. It's not going to make it any worse. It's just, again, it's not going to infuse as much. So definitely try to get it into smaller bits where you can. I'm just going to toss it all in though, because I have very finite time to make videos. So anyway, so again, this is where you want to just sort of connect with it, again, just start to even fill it with your intent just by thinking about it. So I want this rose to protect me. I want this rose to protect my house. I want this rose to prevent any harm from entering my thresholds, my doorways. So kind of connect with it. And then again, next, all you can do simply, very, very simply, is you blow on it very gently and just say, awake, awake, awake. Awake, rose, to your power of protection, to your power of soothing, to your power of peace. Protect me and all that enter. Keep peace in the home. Keep protection in the home. Don't let any negative energy come in. So again, this is very off the cuff. I kind of just go off the cuff for these type of things. I don't have any kind of a set script for these because I do try to tailor them, but you want to wake up your ingredient first. So the same, now I've actually already done this to these, just so you know, it's already been done. But same with your rosemary, again, you want to blow very gently. You don't want the herbs to scatter everywhere, but same thing, you kind of just spend a little bit of time connecting with it, just feel it, and already start to kind of funnel your intent. If you use your dominant hand, this is easier because then you can kind of see energy going out, from your dominant hand into the herb. Your intent is going inside it. And then again, you would simply do the same. Awake, 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 rosemary, to your power of protection. And the same thing, you would just repeat what we did with the rose. Again, make the words your own. Do whatever feels natural to you. One other thing you can do when you are charging your ingredients, I'll just use this one since this is the only one that did not get touched recently. So I'm going to take 2 sticks actually out. So this one, again, this is sage blossoms, and for this one, I'm going to show you the final step of your charging. So first you want to awake, you want to connect, and then you want to actually put your hand over it. I kind of put my hand on top of it a little bit, my dominant hand, and I'm showing you, but I would just have this on the table. And again, this is where you're going to charge. So we are going to do a pentagram, and then we are going to just charge it with our intent one last time. So the banishing pentagram, and I will teach you how to do this, but basically banishing pentagram goes from, this is the earth banishing pentagram. There are different invoking and banishing pentagrams of different elements, of course. This one is the most common, and it is the banishing earth pentagram. So you basically are going from your left hip, the outside of your left hip, you're going up, you're going down to your right hip, up to your left shoulder, across to your right shoulder, and back down to your left hip. That is the banishing pentagram of earth, and that is the one used most often. You also want to use, now I'm not going to flip you, but basically most people use their middle finger for Saturn. Saturn is again a very powerful protection sort of protective planetary association, and you can also use your index finger. Your index finger is Jupiter, and so also very protective. So I'm actually going to use these 2 fingers, and this is quite common. These 2 fingers are quite common, so that in spell work in general, if you don't have a wand, if you don't have any sort of magical implements, just use these. These are the greatest magical implements on the planet. So what I'm going to do the same thing is, again, you could just use your middle finger, but I don't want to flip you over. So here, so we're just going to use these 2 fingers. And so we are going to just do our banishing pentagram. Again, you can either do it like this and do the whole way and imagine sort of an electric blue or a bright white energy going out into the herb. You can do that, or you can just do the quarters sort of. You can do that as well. So you can kind of just jump around. And so that, again, that is a banishing pentagram that's going to just cleanse, energetically cleanse your material. And then after as you're doing this, you want to charge it one more time. So again, and this is, again, you could say I wake, or you could say I charge you, or you could say different things. So in this way, I like to continue to awaken it. So that's how I do it. So awake, 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 sage, awake. Help me protect my home. I charge you to protect my home. I charge you to repel all negative and harmful energy that would do me harm. I charge you to always protect my family and those inside. Only let love enter. Only let love leave. So mote it be. Okay, so again, use different words. I tend to use similar formulas, but use what feels natural to you. And the banishing pentagram, I usually do it 3 times. So I kind of usually just do the 3-time one and then see the energy infusing it, and then charge and say whatever charging words I want to do. So you're going to do that separately with all of your ingredients, and once they are charged, you are going to put them into your jar. So I'm actually going to put my rose on the bottom, I think. Now I might actually have grabbed a little bit too much material. I do kind of pack it inside a little bit here. And you can pack it a little bit tighter as well, so I'm not going to use up all of these sage blossoms. I don't want it to be too full. So, and I'm going to take this one stick out. This is about how full you want it to be. Now I'm actually kind of already a little bit full, a little bit more full than I usually make it, but that's okay. I have a little bit of room there. I'm not going to add all of my rosemary either. Just going to add that last little bit. Maybe a little bit more sage blossom, and just pack it down a little bit. Okay, so there you have it. This is I probably wouldn't go any more than that, because you want it to really fill up with oil and try to get all of that stuff on the bottom as much as possible. It will float up, and that's why we're going to shake it. But again, you will have some things float up. It is just how it's inevitable. So I'm going to pour in my olive oil, and again, I didn't want it to spill, so I kind of have a paper towel over. Okay, so as you can see, it's already started to float up to the top. It's pretty much, you eventually will start to sink a little bit more the more that it absorbs, but for now it's going to float up, and so you'll have to shake it quite a lot. Now this is the final step. We're going to charge it one more time. So we've physically cleaned our jar, we've energetically cleaned our jar. I would even do an energetic cleansing on my ingredients. I think I forgot to mention that, but I would even do like a smudging or a bell or whatever it is that you want to use. But I would cleanse, energetically cleanse, charge each one individually, add them in. And then what we're going to do is we are going to charge one more time. And this is where we're going to add our intent. And you would do the same thing. You do not need to wake it up. I would do maybe a couple of banishing pentagrams. So maybe do again, maybe 3 banishing pentagrams. You could do it in a line, so you can kind of draw it like this. Or you can do the corners like this. You can keep your eyes open, you can keep your eyes closed. I like to keep mine closed just so that I can really feel my energy going into it. And so again, you're feeling that energy go out of your dominant hand and into this oil. And so after you have kind of done your final banishing pentagram around it, you are going to have this ready, and you are going to do 1 charge. And so again, this could be something like very simple. So I charge you And you can name the item. So I charge, you can say you, I like to say you, but if that feels too weird, you can say, I charge this oil to be protective. I charge this oil to remove all negative energy from entering my house. I charge this oil to repel all that would harm me. I charge this oil to only bring in love and light. Let there be love and light in my home. So would it be. You know, and you can again substitute the words, but then what we're going to do is we're actually going to just slide right over. So hopefully you saw what I did there. And the reason for that is we don't want any of your intent to sort of get outside. So that's why I did that. You don't have to do it. But again, that's just my belief is I think that once my intent is energy, and once I put the energy in there, I don't want my energy to escape. And so once you have it on, make sure the lid is on tight. This is where you don't forget to label it. You would say how long it's good for, what's inside, when you made it, all of that stuff. And I would even put what intent you wanted to use it for. So all that stuff that we did for charging, you want to kind of write maybe some keywords, because you could use the same ingredients for different things. A lot of times plants are multi-purpose, and so you definitely want to remember what's the intent of some of your oils as well. So that helps. So anyway, hopefully that helps you. And then at the end, so now here we have our beautiful jar. It's going to start changing color a little bit, very slightly, because again, it's a thick oil. And then what we're going to do is we are going to give it a shake. Now, this one is a protective oil, so even when you're shaking, you can kind of visualize, visualize all the protection that you want to bring to your house. Give it a really good shake. Again, just give it a really, really good shake here. You want to go if you want to make an oil that is, for example, something that maybe you're going to use for hexing, you probably want to get more anger or different emotions in. So try to funnel the emotion in. This one is a little bit more peaceful because I have the rose in there. So I'm not, you notice I'm not shaking it to the point where it's like flying out of my hand almost. I'm giving it a good vigorous shake, but I'm also kind of envisioning I want my house to be filled with love and happiness and light. And so again, I'm pouring that in as I shake it. And that shaking is a bit of chaos magic. So again, when you shake, you kind of stir things up. You're really adding your intent even more so. After we're done, we're labeled, everything's good to go. It's been shaken up quite well. You're going to put it in. Now there are two thoughts. I'm not a master herbalist, just to preface this, but I keep mine on my windowsill. I keep mine kind of near my windowsill, not in direct sunlight. Some people keep it in direct sunlight. Some people say dark, cool place. To be honest, I would just research and figure out which one you prefer. I like that I like to keep it somewhere warm though, because I feel like that's where you get the oil warmed up with the ingredients. It makes it better. It makes the infusion better. However, I also think that this may make your oil spoil faster, because again, anytime you introduce heat, it can make things go rancid. So be aware that you may not have as long of a shelf life if you keep it somewhere warm, which is why I think most people tend to keep it cool, but I use mine up pretty quickly. And so, especially in a smaller size like this one, so this is where, again, if I were giving it to a friend, I probably would keep it somewhere cool because I would want it to last longer, but it does infuse better in heat. And if you're ever in a pinch, one more thing I will say about that, if you're ever in a pinch and you need an oil right away, you can use the hot method, where you literally have a double boiler. You put your oil and herbs on the top. You don't want to put them directly on heat, and you basically just let them warm up together. I don't want to go too much into that method, but you can research it online quite easily. I try to stay away from that because it won't make as potent of an oil. The ingredients haven't had a chance to sit together for as long, but in a pinch, it is something you can use. The other thing is, if you are going to do that, make sure you watch the oil, because hot oil is a fire hazard. And you also don't want the herbs to cook in the oil. It's like a fine balance. So it is kind of tricky to do that way, but you can do it in a pinch. And then there's also, you can use slow cookers to do them as well. I've actually never done an oil in a slow cooker, but I know people use that method as well. So yeah, this is the slow, very slow way. You're going to let it sit outside for about 2 months. It's quite a long time, and I know that it is a long time, but that is what I would go with. So roughly about 2 months. So somewhere about 6 to 8 weeks. You don't want to let it sit If you really had to, could you get away with 2 or 3 weeks? Yes, but again, to get the most out of it is you want it to sit for about 6 to 8 weeks. And the other part is very important. You want to shake it up every day. You want to get a good top to bottom, which is why we're using it in a tight airproof lid, because you kind of want to do this at least once a day. I would do it twice a day if you can remember. The final thing you could do with these is you can also write, for example, you could write some words, like you can write simply protect and put it on the bottom and just keep your jar over the word. You can make a sigil. We're going to learn how to make sigils in another section, but you could definitely do that. You can put something protective and let it sit over that. So that's something that I love doing. I've seen also people use candles on top of them. I have done that a couple of times. Again, it's just a lot of times I don't have the time to let a candle burn down all the way, even if I use a little chime one. You could maybe use a birthday candle, and then you can carve a sigil into the candle and just attach it to the top with some hot wax from the candle, and then just let it burn down. You could do that, but that, again, for me, I don't have a lot of time, so I just do maybe a sigil on the bottom, and that's what I do. So that's pretty much it about how to make your magical oil. You can use so many different herbs for so many different intents and purposes, but for ours is just for protection. So this is one oil that we made. So hopefully that helps you make your own oil. And then after, what we are going to do, once this oil has sat and sort of marinated together, as I like to call it. I know that's not the right word. It's really infused or macerated. But after it has sat together for quite a long time, you want to strain it out. You can use a double cheesecloth. I think I've used coffee filter in a pinch. You can use a tea strainer. You probably want to drain it a couple of times, and you want to push the herbs down to get all the good stuff out. So definitely you want to do that, but you want to strain it a couple of times, and then after that it will be ready for use. So yeah, definitely don't keep the herbal material inside when you're done. And don't forget that it is only good for about half a year is what I would say. So don't keep it for too long, and don't make huge jars because you will never use them up in time. Think of how long it takes you to use up a giant jar of olive oil. Same thing. So that is one oil that we're going to use. When we are done, what we are going to do is you're going to do a couple of things. You're going to have it go from the lower left corner, the outer frame of your door. You can use this outside, you can do this inside if you're an apartment dweller, and you're basically going to go all around the frame. And so you're going to anoint the outside of your door frame. And you can say something like, I have one prepared, by sacred herbs, oil bound, this home is now made sacred by me. No evil or harm shall cross this ground, as I will, so mote it be. You can use any sort of words that you want, so you can chant this while you're going around the house, or you can say something simple. You can even chant protect, 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 and go all the way around the door frame. So that's one thing. You can also make different runes on the door itself. So you could do like a cross like this. So going from the upper left down, going from the upper right down, and finally going from the top down. So you can make a protective cross. You can add bind runes. You can make your own sigil. You can even draw a banishing pentagram. Again, just like we learned, you can draw a banishing pentagram in the oil and anoint your door. You're also going to walk around and do that too. Now that we're kind of going from the outside in slowly, you can do this on the outside of the door if you don't want oil pentagram to be visible from the outside of your door. You can do this inside. You could even let it dry up a little bit. You can always wipe it if you have guests coming and you're in the broom closet, all that stuff. But this is how you would do it on the day you're protecting. Don't forget about mirrors. Mirrors are thresholds. Windows are thresholds. You don't have to have a giant pentagram all over your windows and mirrors. In fact, because then you have this giant pentagram everywhere. You could, or runes or whatever it is you're using. I make mine in corners as well, and then I actually use the oil, but I don't touch the mirror. I just go near it as well. And then I do in a corner with the actual oil. So yes, all my mirrors have little pentagrams all over the place, or sometimes runes or other sigils. So when guests come, I kind of have to clean them if I'm in the broom closet from those particular guests. So the life of which, I suppose. So anyway, so that is what you're going to do, is you're going to protect all your thresholds with your magical oil. And on the PDF, I will have correspondences this week. So I'm going to have a good section on correspondences of plants and crystals and all the different things that are commonly seen as protective, other elements. So I'm going to make one more quick oil. And again, this has already also been properly charged, but again, it's the same thing. If you wanted to charge, I already kind of charged everything, but if you wanted to charge again, it's the same thing. You would just say, I charge this oil to be protective, protect me and my home, let none harm me, let no harm come to me, protect my family, let no one harm my family. Again, whatever word you want to use, I'm just trying to give you different examples, so you can say whatever is comfortable for you. Now this one is actually dragon's blood. And the reason that I wanted to show you is this one's a little bit different. I wanted to talk about resins. So sometimes plant material, you make oils very differently than resins, because resins, you want them very finely ground up in powder. So hopefully you can see how fine that is. So you do need to grind it up. And the reason that you grind them up is because they don't dissolve. A lot of resins, they do not dissolve in oil. That is why, and some are harder than others. Some have more oil content, some have less. Dragon's blood there's no such thing as dragon's blood essential oil. It is too dense. It just doesn't have oil inside it. You cannot make essential oil out of dragon's blood. If you ever see essential oil as dragon's blood, it's not real. It's physically impossible for you to make essential oil with dragon's blood. You can infuse it. It's not going to mix perfectly. It's going to float, it's going to separate, it's not going to be uniform. Again, such is just life working with resins. But I wanted to just teach you that you can use resins as well, and you have to dry them. Now, I actually have 2 dragon's blood, and I will show you, hopefully you can see. So this one, and I'm sorry, I never took Latin, so I may butcher this, but this one is Daemonops Draco, and this one is Cinnabari Dracayana. So this one actually comes from, this one's a little bit more ubiquitous. This is likely what you will be buying when you buy dragon's blood resin. It's a little bit, you can see it's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit more orangey. You can see this one's a big difference. This one's blood red. This one comes from a totally different tree in Yemen. It is actually not illegal to harvest it, but it's really challenging. Because it's been over harvested, so there are more restrictions. So it's not illegal. You can actually still get it. I've heard some people say it's illegal. It's not, but you have to have better connections to get this. This is the stuff that was used all the way up until medieval times. This is used in ancient Rome for digestive issues, and so this was actually medical. And then in medieval times, it was used more for magic. So medieval grimoires used this. So this dragon's blood, again, you can buy it. It is harder to find. Make sure you trust your source. This one is the stuff you will see most often. Totally different tree. Does not come from Yemen. It comes from maybe sometimes Indonesia. It comes from different places, but again, it comes from different places now because again, it's grown in more places now. Like even this one, it's now grown in Hawaii because they're trying to preserve it from over harvesting in Yemen. So again, there are many other types, just so that you're aware, but this one I use because again, it's actually easier to grind. This one's a little bit trickier, but you can use either or. And again, you just grind it up and you would pour oil in it. So in this case, again, I just wanted to share fractionated coconut oil in this one, and you would just pour it in. This one I'm making a little bit less, so you notice I'm not going to be filling it all the way. That's totally okay. It is better to fill it up when you can, but I just didn't have a jar that's small with a good lid, so I don't have right now. They're all in use, and so I'm just going to pour a little bit more oil and do the exact same thing as I did here, and then I will have another oil. And you can mix different oils. Just be aware that sometimes you will have a shorter shelf life when you do that. Dragon's blood, very protective also. And yeah, so I'm going to use this one a little bit more multi-purpose, but I wanted to make some of it right now. So again, I just wanted to talk about resins and making a magical infused oil with resins. It is possible, but you do have to grind them up. Some resins like frankincense, some resins that have more oil inside, which is why you can't have essential oil out of some of those other ones. You will have to grind them up finely and they will start to coagulate right away. They will start to clump up right away again. So you will need to layer them thinly and let them dry, and you're going to have to repeat that grinding process, I would say at least 4 times, probably maybe even 6. Some of the resins are just really tricky to work with. Not impossible, but then you would do the same thing. You would just pour oil over them, cover them, and let them infuse. So yeah, definitely you can add resins to your repertoire as well. And on my correspondences PDF, I talk about resins, so that's why I wanted to go through it. There are pine resins are really protective, so there are quite a few that you can use that are highly protective. Frankincense as well, of course, all of those other resins. So that wraps up our how to make a magical oil. Hopefully this really helped. And I always end up remembering maybe a small helpful tidbit that I wish I had said in my lecture. So of course, if I do remember of something, I always add it to my PDF later. I don't think I missed anything, but again, if I did, I will add it to the PDF. So be sure to check it out. And next we are going to, now that we've done our oil, we have a protective oil, we've protected our outside, our thresholds, we are going to be talking about how to ward your house. Now this is a really important step, and this is the one that I do even if I don't, maybe sometimes I don't always protect my threshold, but that's because I have wards going, and this is maybe the most important step in how to protect your house. So we're going to talk about wards. We're going to then also we're going to talk about different types of wards, again, just layering on complexity. And then we're going to talk about other things that are maybe more of a bonus, if you will, but things that you don't have to do but are super helpful in protecting your house. And so you will have a whole wide range of ways to protect your house. So we will go into all of those next.